The morning sky above Siberian Death Valley burned with falling stars. But these were not natural meteors streaking across the frozen wasteland. These were drop pods carrying death itself down from the dark void of space. Dae-ho Kim pressed his body flat against the ice ridge and watched through cracked binoculars as the alien vessels slammed into the valley floor below. Each impact sent massive clouds of snow and debris into the air. The ground shook beneath him like an earthquake. His breath came out in white puffs as he counted the landing sites. Too many to count easily. Far too many. "How many do you see?" whispered Youngmi Park from beside him. She kept her voice so low that even Dae-ho could barely hear her over the howling wind. "More than we can handle," Dae-ho replied. His fingers were already numb inside his thick gloves despite the heating pack sewn into the fabric. The temperature was dropping fast as the sun disappeared behind the mountains. Soon, it would reach -40 degrees, maybe colder. Youngmi adjusted her own scope and studied the landing zone. Steam rose from each crash site as the hot metal of the alien pods met the frozen ground. The steam would freeze into ice crystals within minutes. Everything froze here, eventually. Everything except the humans who had learned to survive in this place that killed most visitors within hours. "The ships are big," Youngmi said. "Each one could hold maybe 10 of whatever they are." Dae-ho did quick math in his head. He had counted over 200 landing sites scattered across the valley floor. If Youngmi was right about the numbers, that meant they were looking at roughly 2,000 alien visitors. His stomach felt cold, and it was not from the weather. "We need to get back to base," he said. "The others need to know what we are dealing with." They began crawling backward through the snow, moving slowly and carefully to avoid making noise or leaving obvious tracks. The ice here was treacherous. One wrong move could send them sliding down the ridge into full view of whatever had just landed in their territory. Below them in the valley, the alien pods began to open. Massive creatures emerged from each vessel. Even from this distance, Dae-ho could see they were huge. Easily 8 feet tall and covered in what looked like advanced armor that gleamed even in the dim light. They moved with the confident swagger of apex predators who had never faced a real threat. The aliens began setting up some kind of base camp around the largest cluster of pods. Dae-ho watched them work and felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. These beings moved with military precision. This was not a rescue mission or scientific expedition. This was an invasion force. "Look at their equipment," Youngmi breathed. "Those weapons could probably punch through a tank." She was right. The aliens carried energy weapons that hummed with power even from this distance. Their armor looked more advanced than anything human military forces possessed. But as Dae-ho watched them work, he noticed something interesting. Several of the aliens had stopped moving and were looking around in what seemed like confusion. One of them appeared to be having trouble with its equipment. Another was moving, more slowly than the others, as if something was wrong. "They are having problems," Dae-ho observed. "What kind of problems?" "Look at the one near the big pod. See how it keeps touching its helmet. And that group over there is moving like they are sick or dizzy." Youngmi focused her scope on the aliens Dae-ho had pointed out. After a few minutes of observation, she nodded. "You are right. Something is affecting them already." "The environment," Dae-ho said with grim satisfaction. Whatever world they came from, it was not like this one. The Siberian Death Valley had earned its name honestly. The combination of extreme cold and high radiation levels from underground uranium deposits created conditions that killed most humans within days. The air itself was thin and difficult to breathe. The ground was unstable with hidden cracks that could swallow a person whole. Even the ice was dangerous because it formed over pockets of toxic gas that could explode without warning. But Dae-ho and his small group of survivors had learned to read the signs. They knew which ice was safe to walk on and which areas to avoid. They knew how to find clean water and which plants could be eaten safely. Most importantly, they knew how to stay warm when the temperature dropped low enough to freeze exposed skin in minutes. These aliens clearly did not have that knowledge. "We should go," Youngmi said as more aliens emerged from their pods. "If they have scouts, they might come looking up here." They began the long crawl back to their hidden base 3, miles away. The route took them through a maze of ice formations and rocky outcrops that provided cover from observation. It was a path that Deho had memorized over years of survival in this harsh place. The base was hidden inside a partially collapsed research station that had been abandoned decades earlier. From the outside, it looked like nothing more than twisted metal and broken concrete. But inside, young Mi had created a surprisingly comfortable shelter, using salvaged materials and clever engineering. Tae-Jin Lee was waiting for them when they returned. The former medical student looked up from the radio equipment he was repairing as they entered. His thin face was pale with worry. "I have been picking up transmissions," he said without preamble. "Not in any human language, and there are a lot of them." "We know," Deho replied as he began removing his heavy outer gear. "We saw them land. At least 2,000 of them, maybe more." Tae-Jin set down his tools and stared at them. 2,000. Big ones, young Mi added as she hung up her coat. "Armed and armored like they came here to fight a war." So-Ra Choi emerged from the back room where she had been cleaning weapons. The skilled hunter was the best tracker in their group and could move through the ice fields like a ghost. Her dark eyes were alert and focused as she listened to their report. "What do they want?" she asked. "What do invaders usually want?" Deho replied. "To take what does not belong to them." Minho Jung looked up from the communication station, where he monitored radio frequencies from around the world. The youngest member of their group was barely 20 years old, but he had a gift for understanding technology and communications. "I have been tracking their signals," he said. "They are coordinating with something in orbit. A mothership, probably." "How long before they find us?" So-Ra asked. Deho considered this carefully. The aliens had advanced technology, but they were operating in unfamiliar territory. The Death Valley was a maze of hazards that could trap even experienced human explorers. Still, these invaders had weapons and numbers on their side. "Depends on how smart they are," he said finally, "and how well they adapt to local conditions." As if summoned by his words, a new sound reached them through the thick walls of their shelter. It was a deep thrumming noise that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The sound of alien aircraft beginning systematic patrols of the valley. The hunt had begun. 3 days had passed since the aliens landed in the Death Valley. Deho crouched behind a wall of ice and snow, watching a patrol of 20 alien warriors moving through the canyon below. Their massive forms cut dark shapes against the white landscape as they searched for signs of human life. The aliens called themselves Kethvar according to the radio transmissions Min Ho had decoded. They were hunters from a world where only the strongest survived. Their home planet was a place of endless war and brutal conditions that would kill most galactic species instantly. They had come to Earth expecting easy prey. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "The lead group is moving into position," So-Ra whispered into her radio. She was hidden 200 meters away on the opposite side of the canyon. Her voice was barely audible even through the encrypted channel they used for communications. "I count 20 targets, all carrying energy weapons." Deho pressed his own radio closer to his mouth. "Young Mi, are the charges ready?" "Ready and waiting," came the reply from their engineer. She was positioned near the canyon mouth where she had spent the last 2 days carefully placing explosive charges. Not the kind of explosives that would kill the aliens directly, something much more clever than that. The Kethvar patrol moved deeper into the canyon, following tracks that So-Ra had left deliberately. Footprints in the snow that seemed to show a small group of humans fleeing in panic toward the dead end of the narrow passage. The aliens followed the trail eagerly like predators sensing wounded prey. But Deho and his team had lived in this canyon system for years. They knew every rock and ice formation. They knew which walls were solid and which were ready to collapse. Most importantly, they knew about the underground methane deposits that leaked gas through cracks in the frozen ground. "Tae-Jin report," Deho said into his radio. "Wind conditions are perfect," the medic replied from his position high above the canyon. "Blowing from the north at 15 kilometers per hour. Gas dispersal will be optimal." The Kethvar were now deep in the canyon. Their heavy armored boots crunched through the snow as they followed the false trail. Deho could see them clearly through his binoculars. Each warrior stood over 8 feet tall, and carried weapons that could probably cut through steel. Their armor was covered with sensors and communication devices that linked them to their orbiting mothership. But all that advanced technology could not help them understand the simple, deadly nature of their surroundings. "Minho, are you ready?" With the communications jamming, Daeho asked. "Standing by," came the reply. The young man had built a signal jammer using parts salvaged from the old research station. It would not stop the aliens from talking to each other, but it would prevent them from calling for help from their ship in orbit. The lead Kethvar warrior raised one massive arm and pointed toward the end of the canyon. The gesture was clearly visible even from Daeho's position. The alien was directing his troops to surround the area where the human track seemed to lead. "Now, Minho," Daeho said. Immediately, the air filled with electronic static as the jammer activated. The Kethvar warriors stopped moving and began touching their helmets. Their communication systems had gone dead. They were now cut off from their command ship and from each other except for short-range signals. "Sora, begin the withdrawal," Daeho ordered. The hunter began moving backward through the ice caves that honeycombed the canyon walls. Passages that were far too narrow for the bulky Kethvar warriors, but perfect for humans who knew how to navigate them. Within minutes, she would be completely clear of the danger zone. The aliens were now bunched together in the narrowest part of the canyon, exactly where Daeho wanted them. Their leader was gesturing angrily at his communication device, trying to re-establish contact with the orbiting ship. The other warriors were spreading out to search the area, but they were still confined within the canyon walls. "Young Mai, prepare to activate the charges," Daeho said. "Charges armed and ready," she replied. "Detonation in 30 seconds. Daeho counted down silently as he watched the aliens below. 29, 28, 27. The Kethvar warriors had found the end of the human trail and were looking around in confusion. Where were their prey? 20, 19, 18. One of the aliens had knelt down and was examining the snow more carefully. Daeho could see the warrior's massive head turning from side to side as it searched for more clues. 10, 9, 8. The alien leader was pointing upward toward the canyon walls. They were beginning to realize this might be a trap. 3, 2, 1. The explosions were not loud. Young Mi had designed them to be small and precise, but the effects were devastating. The charges she had placed were not meant to kill the aliens directly. Instead, they cracked open the underground gas deposits that lay beneath the canyon floor. Invisible methane gas began pouring out of the ground. The gas was heavier than air, so it flowed like water into the lowest parts of the canyon, where the Kethvar warriors were standing. Within seconds, the entire area was filled with a deadly invisible cloud. The aliens could not see or smell the gas. Their sensors were designed to detect energy weapons and biological threats. But methane was just a simple hydrocarbon, harmless by itself, until Taejin fired his flare gun. The canyon erupted in flame. The methane gas ignited in a massive fireball that reached up to the canyon rim. The explosion was so bright that Daeho had to shield his eyes even from his protected position. The sound echoed off the canyon walls like thunder. When the flames died down, only silence remained. Daeho waited 5 minutes before moving from his position. The air was still hot and filled with smoke, but the immediate danger was over. He made his way carefully down to the canyon floor, where the Kethvar patrol had been standing. 15 of the 20 aliens were dead. Their advanced armor had protected them from the worst of the explosion, but the intense heat had overwhelmed their life support systems. The survivors were wounded and stunned. Their weapons were scattered across the canyon floor. "Sora, collect the weapons," Daeho ordered as his team gathered around the ambush site. "Young Mai, see what you can learn from their equipment." "What about the survivors?" Taejin asked as he examined one of the wounded aliens. Daeho looked at the massive warriors lying helpless in the snow. These creatures had come to his world as conquerors. They had expected to hunt humans like animals. Instead, they had walked into a trap that used their own strength against them. "Leave them," he said. "Let them walk back to their base if they can. Let them tell their friends what happened here." As the humans gathered the alien weapons and equipment, Daeho thought about the larger picture. This had been just one patrol. There were still almost 2,000 Kethvar warriors somewhere in the Death Valley. They would be angry now. They would be more careful, but they would also be afraid. And fear was a weapon that Deho knew how to use. The surviving aliens watched in silence as the humans disappeared back into the ice caves. They had come to Earth as apex predators from a death world. They were learning that Earth had its own apex predators, and those predators were human. The alien commander stood over the wounded survivors of the canyon ambush. His name was Vextar, and he had conquered 12 worlds for the Kethvar Empire. Never before had he lost an entire patrol to primitive natives. The rage burning in his chest was colder than the frozen air around him. "Tell me again what happened," he demanded. The wounded warrior struggled to speak through his damaged breathing apparatus. "The humans, they knew the terrain, used fire against us. Our sensors could not detect the trap." Vextar turned away from his injured soldiers and stared across the Death Valley. Somewhere out there, 5 humans were making fools of his elite forces. 5 primitives armed with simple weapons were defeating warriors who had been trained since birth to kill. "Bring me the science officer," he ordered. Within minutes, a smaller Kethvar wearing different armor approached the command post. This one carried scanning equipment instead of weapons. His job was to study enemy capabilities and find weaknesses. "What have you learned about these humans?" Vextar asked. "They are fascinating specimens, sir. Their biology is adapted for extreme conditions. They can survive in temperatures that would kill most galactic species. Their blood carries extra oxygen to compensate for the thin atmosphere. Most interesting of all, they seem immune to the local pathogens." Vextar's eyes narrowed. "What pathogens?" "The air here is filled with microscopic organisms, sir. Bacteria and viruses that appear harmless to humans, but are proving quite deadly to our physiology. We have lost 47 warriors to disease in the past week." This was news to Vextar. He had been so focused on finding and killing the human survivors that he had not paid attention to the growing number of his soldiers reporting to the medical bay. "How deadly?" "Fatal within days if untreated, sir. The organisms attack our respiratory systems and nervous tissue. Our immune systems were never evolved to handle Earth pathogens." 20 miles away, Deho was learning the same information from a very different source. Taijin had been studying tissue samples taken from dead aliens found near their old ambush site. What he discovered made him smile for the first time in weeks. "Look at this," Taijin said as he showed the others his makeshift laboratory setup. "The alien cells are breaking down when exposed to common Earth bacteria. Microorganisms that would barely give us a cold are killing them." Young Mai leaned over the microscope. "Are you saying they are allergic to our planet?" "More than allergic. Their immune systems are completely unprepared for Earth biology. Every breath they take is poisoning them slowly." Sora looked up from the alien weapons she was cleaning. "Can we use this against them?" "Already working on it," Taijin replied. "I have been collecting samples from the most infected areas around the valley. If I can concentrate the right pathogens..." Deho nodded approvingly. "How long before you have something useful?" "Give me 2 days, maybe 3. While Taijin worked on his biological warfare project, the rest of the team prepared for the next phase of their campaign. The aliens had stopped sending small patrols after the canyon ambush. Now they moved in larger groups with better equipment and air support from their orbiting ship. But larger groups meant bigger targets. Min Ho had been monitoring alien communications and had identified a pattern in their search operations. Every 3 days, a force of 200 Kethvar warriors would sweep through a different section of the valley. They were methodical and thorough, but also predictable. "They will hit Sector 7 next," he reported during their evening briefing. "Based on their search pattern, they should arrive at the old research facility tomorrow afternoon." Young Mi smiled. She had been working on modifications to that facility for the past month. "Perfect. I have a few surprises waiting for them there." The abandoned research station sat in the middle of a flat area surrounded by ice fields. From the air, it looked like an obvious place for humans to take shelter. The buildings were partially intact and seemed to offer protection from the wind and cold. What the aliens could not see were the modifications. Young Mi had made to the facility's geothermal systems. The original research team had tapped into underground hot springs to heat their buildings. Young Mi had expanded that system and turned it into a weapon. Pipes now ran throughout the complex carrying superheated steam under pressure. With the flip of a switch, she could turn any room into a death trap, but the real surprise was hidden in the main laboratory building. Taijin had finished his biological weapon ahead of schedule. The concentrated pathogen mix was loaded into the building's ventilation system waiting to be released. One breath of the contaminated air would be enough to kill any Kethvar warrior within hours. "Remember, the timing is critical," Daeho explained as they took their positions around the facility. "We let them enter the buildings and get comfortable. Then Young Mi activates the steam system to drive them into the central laboratory. Taijin releases the pathogens and we seal all the exits." Sora was positioned on a hill overlooking the complex with a rifle and alien energy weapon. "What if some of them try to escape?" "Pick them off as they run," Daeho replied. "But most of them will be too sick to run far." The Kethvar force arrived exactly when Minho had predicted. 200 warriors in full combat armor supported by flying vehicles that circled the facility like metal vultures. Their commander was taking no chances after the canyon disaster. Vextar himself led the assault team. He had decided that these humans needed to be dealt with personally. The loss of face from the previous ambush could only be restored by killing them with his own hands. "Sweep every building," he ordered his troops. "Kill anything that moves." The warriors spread out and began entering the facility through multiple entrances. Their sensors showed no immediate signs of human presence, but they had learned to be cautious. The building seemed empty and abandoned. Daeho watched from his hidden position as the aliens flooded into the complex. They moved with military precision, checking every room and corridor. But they were also bunching together in the central areas just as he had hoped. "Now, Young Mi," he whispered into his radio. The steam system activated with a massive roar. Superheated vapor erupted from hidden vents throughout the outer buildings. The temperature in those rooms instantly jumped to over 100 degrees Celsius. Even the Kethvar's advanced armor could not protect them from that kind of heat. Aliens began pouring out of the outer buildings and rushing toward the central laboratory where the air seemed cooler. Exactly as Young Mi had designed the system to work, the steam was herding them like animals into the killing zone. "Taijin, release the package," Daeho ordered. The pathogen-loaded air began flowing through the laboratory ventilation system. Invisible death that the aliens breathed in with every gulp of air. The concentrated bacteria would overwhelm their immune systems within minutes. But the Kethvar were tough. Even as they began to sicken, they continued fighting. Energy weapons fired in all directions as confused warriors tried to find targets in the steam-filled chaos. "Minho jammed their communications," Daeho said. "Do not let them call for air support." The electronic jamming system activated, cutting the ground forces off from their orbital backup. The flying vehicles circling overhead could see that something was wrong, but they could not coordinate with the troops inside the facility. Within an hour, it was over. The superheated steam and biological weapons had done their work. Of the 200 Kethvar warriors who had entered the facility, only a handful stumbled out alive. Most of those collapsed in the snow outside and died within minutes from the pathogens in their lungs. Vextar was among the dead. The proud commander who had conquered 12 worlds died coughing up blood on the floor of a human research facility, while Earth bacteria consumed his organs from the inside. The 5 humans emerged from their hiding places and surveyed the carnage. 800 aliens were now dead. Their weapons and equipment lay scattered across the Death Valley. The invasion force that had seemed unstoppable just days earlier was falling apart, but Daeho knew this was far from over. There were still over 1,000 Kethvar warriors somewhere in the valley. They would be angry now, desperate. That made them even more dangerous. "We need to keep moving," he told his team. "They will bring everything they have against us now." The remaining Kethvar warriors huddled around their failing heating units as another blizzard swept across the Death Valley. Sub-Commander Nexthai looked at his dwindling forces and felt something he had never experienced before in 20 years of warfare. Fear. Of the 2,000 elite warriors who had landed on this frozen death world, only 360 remained alive. Disease had claimed almost as many as direct combat. Their mighty invasion force was becoming a survival mission. "Sir, we are receiving distress signals from Patrol Group 7 and 12, reported his communications officer. "They have gone, silent in the past hour." Nexthai cursed in the harsh language of his homeworld. More warriors dead. More equipment lost. The humans were picking apart his forces like scavengers feeding on a dying beast. "How many warriors do we have left who are still combat ready?" he asked. "Less than 300, sir. Many of the others are too sick to fight. The medical bay is full of soldiers dying from local infections." 20 miles away, Sora moved through the ice field like a ghost. Her white camouflage made her invisible against the snow as she tracked a group of 12 Kethvar warriors. The aliens were lost and confused. Their navigation equipment was failing in the extreme cold, and they had been wandering in circles for hours. She spoke quietly into her radio. "Found another patrol. 12 targets moving north toward the thermal fence. They look tired and scared." Deho's voice crackled back through the static. "Take them down quietly. We do not want to alert the main base." Sora smiled and began moving closer to her prey. The Kethvar were making too much noise as they trudged through the deep snow. Their heavy armor made stealth impossible. They moved, like a herd of sick animals rather than elite soldiers. She positioned herself on a ridge overlooking their path and began setting up her rifle. The weapon was a hybrid creation that Young Mi had built using salvaged alien technology. It fired projectiles with enough force to punch through Kethvar armor while remaining nearly silent. The first alien dropped without a sound. His companions did not notice for almost 30 seconds. When they finally realized their leader was down, they began looking around in panic. But they were looking for energy weapon signatures. They had no idea how to spot a human sniper. The second shot took down their communications specialist. The third killed their medic. Within 5 minutes, all 12 warriors lay dead in the snow. Sora gathered their weapons and equipment before melting back into the ice field. "Patrol eliminated," she reported, moving to intercept the next group. This was how the war had changed. The massive battles were over. Now it was a slow, grinding hunt as the humans systematically destroyed every small group of aliens they could find. The Kethvar had made the mistake of splitting their forces to search for the human survivors. Instead, they had made themselves easy targets. Young Mi was busy in her workshop converting captured alien technology into new weapons. The energy cells from Kethvar weapons could power human equipment for weeks. Their armor plating could be reshaped into better protection. Most importantly, their communication devices could be modified to intercept alien transmissions. "I have been listening to their radio chatter," she told Deho as she worked on a new device. "They are terrified. Half their messages are requests for medical evacuation. The other half are arguments about whether to retreat." "Are they actually considering retreat?" Deho asked. "Some of them are, but their commander is refusing to authorize it. Something about honor and conquest." Taejin looked up from his biological weapons research. "Good. The longer they stay, the more of them will die from disease. I estimate another 50 will be dead within the week just from illness." Minho was monitoring communications from the alien mothership in orbit. "The ship is getting nervous, too. They keep asking for status reports that never come. I think they are starting to realize this mission has gone very wrong." The truth was even worse than the humans realized. On board the Kethvar command ship, Fleet Admiral Kexton was reading reports that filled him with disbelief. How could an elite invasion force be losing to 5 primitive humans on a backwater world? "Send down reinforcements," he ordered his staff. "Sir, we cannot," replied his tactical officer. "The surface conditions are too dangerous. We have lost 3 supply ships already to atmospheric interference. The radiation levels are affecting our navigation systems." Kexton slammed his fist against the command console. "Then what do you suggest, that we abandon our warriors?" "Perhaps, sir, it would be wise to consider a strategic withdrawal. We could return with different equipment better suited for these conditions." The Admiral's pride would not allow such a retreat. The Kethvar had never fled from a primitive world. Their reputation as the galaxy's most feared warriors depended on completing this mission. Negative. The ground forces will adapt and overcome. Send orders to split into smaller groups and hunt these humans down one by one. It was exactly the wrong order to give. Within hours, the remaining Kethvar warriors had divided into groups of 10 to 20 soldiers each. They spread out across the Death Valley in a desperate attempt to corner their human tormentors. Instead, they created dozens of isolated targets for the humans to eliminate. Daeho and his team went to work with ruthless efficiency. They had mapped every inch of the valley over years of survival. They knew where every patrol would have to go for shelter. They knew which routes offered the best ambush positions. Most importantly, they knew how to use the environment itself as a weapon. One group of aliens took shelter in a cave system that looked safe and warm. Young Mai had rigged the caves with explosive charges weeks earlier. The aliens died when the roof collapsed and buried them under tons of rock and ice. Another patrol tried to cross a frozen lake that seemed solid. Sora had spent days weakening the ice in strategic locations. The aliens fell through into water, so cold it killed them within minutes even inside their heated armor. A third group found what appeared to be an abandoned human shelter. Taejin had left it as a trap loaded with concentrated pathogens. The aliens who entered looking for clues about human movements died coughing up blood as earth bacteria consumed their lungs. Day by day, the alien numbers dropped. 300 became 250, then 200, then 150. Each death made the survivors more desperate and more likely to make fatal mistakes. The humans moved through the valley like death itself. They struck without warning and vanished before the aliens could respond. They used weapons that the Kethvar sensors could not detect and tactics that their military training had never prepared them for. Nexthai received reports of the losses with growing horror. His mighty invasion force was being systematically exterminated by creatures he had expected to hunt like animals. The humans were not prey. They were apex predators, and this frozen wasteland was their hunting ground. Sir, we have lost contact with patrols 4 through 12, his communications officer reported with a trembling voice. That leaves us with less than 100 combat-effective warriors. Nexthai stared at the tactical display showing the positions of his remaining forces. Red markers indicated confirmed casualties. Yellow showed units that had gone silent. Green marked the few groups still reporting in. The map was mostly red and yellow now. Send a message to the fleet, he said finally. Request immediate evacuation of all surviving personnel. Sir, the Admiral has specifically ordered us to complete the mission. The mission is over, Nexthai replied. We are no longer an invasion force. We are refugees trying to survive long enough for rescue. But even rescue was becoming impossible. The few landing ships that tried to reach the surface were shot down by weapons the humans had built from captured alien technology. Young Mi's hybrid missiles could track and destroy Kethvar aircraft with devastating accuracy. The mighty warriors who had conquered worlds were trapped on a planet that was slowly killing them. And somewhere in the blizzard, 5 humans continued their patient hunt. The Kethvar had come to Earth as predators. They were learning what it meant to be prey. The emergency beacon cut through the static of deep space like a scream. Fleet Admiral Kexton stood frozen on the bridge of his command ship as the transmission played for the 3rd time. The voice belonged to Sub-Commander Nexatai, but it sounded like a broken animal rather than a proud Kethvar warrior. Requesting immediate evacuation. Mission failure. Repeat mission failure. We have 5 survivors remaining. Cannot hold position. The humans are hunting us. 5 survivors. Out of 2,000 elite warriors, only 5 remained. Alive after 3 months on the human death world. Kexton felt his legs weaken as the full scope of the disaster became clear. This was not just a military defeat. This was the complete annihilation of his finest troops by primitive natives. Prepare a rescue shuttle, he ordered his crew. Full stealth configuration, get our people out of there. On the surface of Earth, the 5 surviving Kethvar warriors huddled in the wreckage of their command post. They had not eaten in 2 days. Their armor was cracked and failing. Worst of all, they could hear the humans moving through the ice fields around them, getting closer every hour. Nexthai clutched his damaged communicator and tried to raise the orbiting fleet again. Command, this is Ground Team Alpha. Please respond. We need immediate extraction. Static answered him. The humans had been jamming their communications for weeks. Only the emergency beacon seemed to get through, and even that signal was weak and broken. "Sir, they are coming," whispered one of his remaining soldiers. The warrior's voice was thick with fever from the infections that were slowly killing them all. "I can see movement on the eastern ridge." Nexthai raised his binoculars and scanned the snowy landscape. At first he saw nothing. Then a shadow moved between two ice formations. Another shifted position near a cluster of rocks. The humans were out there, watching, waiting. "Why do they not just attack?" asked another survivor. "They could kill us easily." Nexthai knew the answer, and it chilled him more than the freezing wind. The humans were not attacking because they did not need to. The Kethvar were already dying from disease and exposure. The humans were simply waiting for them to finish the job themselves. 3 miles away, Deho watched the alien survivors through his scope. The 5 Kethvar looked pitiful, huddled in their broken shelter. These were the mighty warriors who had come to conquer Earth. Now they were just frightened creatures waiting to die on a world that had rejected them completely. "Should we finish them?" Sora asked from her position nearby. Deho considered. It would be easy to end it now. A few shots and the invasion would be completely over, but something made him hesitate. These aliens had learned what it meant to face humanity on its home ground. Perhaps it was better to let some of them live to carry that lesson back to the stars. "Let them wait," he said finally. "Their ship will come for them eventually." Young Mai was monitoring alien communications from their hidden base. "I am picking up movement from the mothership. Looks like they are preparing a rescue mission." "How long?" Deho asked. 6 hours, maybe 7. They are being very careful with their approach. Taejin looked up from the medical supplies he was organizing. "Will the aliens survive that long?" "2 of them are already dying from pneumonia," Youngmi replied after checking her medical scanners. "The others are not much better. Earth is finishing what we started." Minho was tracking signals from across the galaxy. The news of the Kethvar defeat was already spreading through alien communication networks. Other species were learning that the mighty warriors had been crushed by humans on a world they had expected to conquer easily. "Listen to this," he said, as he played a translated transmission. "This is from the Zephyrian Trade Federation. They are canceling all planned expeditions to human space. They say Earth is too dangerous for civilized species." More messages followed. The Galactic Council was holding emergency sessions to discuss the human threat. Military forces across known space were being redirected away from Earth's solar system. The entire galaxy was suddenly afraid of a species they had barely noticed before. As the hours passed, the rescue shuttle finally appeared in Earth's atmosphere. The small vessel moved carefully through the radiation fields and atmospheric interference that had claimed so many previous ships. Its pilot was taking no chances with the planet that had destroyed an entire invasion force. The shuttle landed near the Kethvar survivors and immediately began loading the dying warriors. The pilot kept his engines running and his weapons powered. He expected human attacks at any moment, but no attacks came. Deho and his team watched from concealment as the aliens were carried aboard the rescue craft. They made no move to interfere. The message had already been sent. Let these survivors return to tell their people what they had learned. The shuttle lifted off and disappeared into the cloudy sky. Within minutes, it had docked with the mothership waiting in orbit. The massive Kethvar fleet began moving away from Earth immediately. They had come seeking easy conquest and found only death and defeat. On board the command ship, Admiral Kexton stared at the 5 broken warriors, who were all that remained of his invasion force. They were barely alive and would never fully recover from their exposure to Earth's hostile environment. But they were witnesses to humanity's power. "What are these humans?" he asked Nexthai as medical teams worked to save the sub-commander's life. "Survivors," Nexthai whispered through damaged lungs. "They are born killers who learn to thrive in hell itself. Every breath on that world is poison. Every step could be your last. But they call it home." The report that reached the Galactic Council 3 weeks later changed everything. The official military assessment was clear and terrifying. Earth was not just another primitive world waiting for conquest. It was a death trap inhabited by the most dangerous predator species ever encountered. The humans had not just defeated the Kethvar through superior technology or numbers. They had used their planet itself as a weapon. Their knowledge of local conditions and their adaptation to extreme environments made them nearly unstoppable on their home ground. Species across the galaxy read the report with growing alarm. If humans could destroy the feared Kethvar so completely, what would they do to weaker civilizations? More importantly, what would happen if these deadly predators ever left their death world and spread to other planets? Some alien governments called for immediate military action to contain the human threat before it could expand. Others argued for peaceful contact and possible alliance with such a powerful species. A few suggested simply avoiding Earth entirely and hoping the humans would stay on their deadly homeworld. But down on Earth's frozen surface, 5 humans sat around a small fire and planned their next meal. Taeho was cleaning weapons while young Mi worked on a new heating system for their shelter. Tae-jin was brewing medicine from local plants and Sora was preparing meat from their latest hunt. Minho monitored radio frequencies and listened to the galaxy's growing fear of humanity. "They think we are monsters," he said with amusement as he translated another panicked alien transmission. "Are we?" asked Sora as she turned the cooking meat. Dae-ho looked around at his small group of survivors. They had lived through conditions that killed trained alien warriors. They had defeated a technologically superior invasion force, using nothing but knowledge and determination. They had turned their hostile environment into a weapon that no alien technology could overcome. "We are human," he said simply. "That is enough." The fire crackled in the cold air as the 5 survivors continued their daily struggle for existence in the Death Valley. Above them, the stars shone down on a galaxy that was just beginning to understand what humanity truly was. Not victims waiting for conquest, but apex predators who had claimed the most dangerous world in known space as their home. The invasion was over. The real story of humanity was just beginning.